Emilia, I think we should put the camera first on Francesco.
Yeah.
About him. Exactly. That's a great start.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, we are ready to start. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Hello. Francesco having his lunch. I think he's watching television. Hello.
Wonderful.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marguerite. And
Oh,
How about I make it bigger?
Make it bigger.
just a second.
Dinosaur.
Oh, too much.
Maybe
Margaret, are you here with us? Here now. Sorry. Yes, we can.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Are you going to say hello, or shall I welcome everybody?
You can welcome everyone. Yes.
Okay. Hello, everybody, all over the place. We are very, very excited and a little nervous and happy, very happy to be having our today's webinar with you. The webinar is one of NoTube's trials to try and reach out to parents who would like to understand more about that. And I have the immense pleasure today of being connected with Emilia and Adam, whom you can see. And
Hello.
one of their 3 children is sitting right next to them, which is little Francesco, whom, yeah, we can see him now. And little Francesco, we had the pleasure of meeting, I think it was the beginning of February. We started what we call the Netcoaching, which is a telemedical online weaning program. And we will be talking about your experiences with our program, and especially try and explain to you from the parents' perspective how one can imagine this experience to be in case one is interested in doing something like that with one's own child. So the topic today is the tube-fed child. Francesco has a gastric tube, that's why we can't see it in his face. And the task is trying to transition a child from full tube feeds to full oral feeds. And in Francesco's case, we still have the specific situation that he has a medical underlying congenital skin disorder, which was very, very severe at the beginning of his life, leading to the indication of needing the tube. And at the age of just 2 years old, the parents found us and started working with us, and we were able to support them to help Francesco make this voyage to normal, natural, oral, sustainable eating. Now, at the very beginning, thank you for both of your commitment to share your experiences. And maybe my very, very first question would be, how on earth did you find out that we exist?
It's a good question. When Francesco was about 6 months old and he was supposed to transition from tube feeds into oral feeding, like every other child, I realized that there was it was not going to be as straightforward as just a baby that is being breastfed or bottle fed. So I've been start searching on internet for what was I supposed to do, you know, what kind of help I could have, and I came across NoTube. So this is how I found out, basically, just on internet. You know, nobody told me anything, you know, nobody told me it was going to be difficult, you know, I
So
just
you put in the search word tube feeding or tube weaning, or do you read it?
Yeah, exactly that. I put tube, I put weaning, I put, I don't know, problems, you know, oral feeding, you know, everything that, you know, came in my mind that I was thinking was going to be a problem. And NoTube was the first one that I found. And I started reading all the testimonials, and I started getting into understanding a little bit more how complicated it can be and what kind of issue we were going to face that absolutely nobody told us, you know. So I was completely shocked, honestly, you know.
When Francesco was little, he had a speech and language therapist that followed us locally, and he had a dietitian based at Great Ormond Street in London as well. And they were relatively adamant that Francesco would wean, but that was, you know, sometimes a couple of years within the future. And we were sort of more and more convinced by what we were reading online and through our research ourselves that, you know, the longer that we leave that, the more difficult that transition would become. And so at 6 months, we started to research online and found NoTube just fortuitously through Google. But it wasn't until he was 18 months old and still with nothing being taken orally whatsoever, and 100% of his feeds and fluids going down his tube, that we finally made the decision to engage with NoTube.
Could you tell us a little bit about your memory of what your first meeting with NoTube was? Was this a visual contact like Zoom or chatting? How did you experience the very first contact, and with whom was it when you made the decision you want to contact NoTube?
Yeah, the first contact was through the phone, because it was a call with Eva. That, you know, we booked a slot, you know, time slot.
What happened in this? What could you find out in this phone which helped you go on with the decision?
Well, as we said, we were completely, you know, we didn't know what to expect, you know. We were just desperate, you know, like, you know, please help us. What can you do to help us? And Eva, I think, was really, I don't want to say reassuring, but, you know, she knew exactly what we were going through when we called, and she said, the problem is the tube.
Yeah.
You know.
Emilia had done a lot of research herself, had found NoTube herself online, had read the testimonials, had read everything that other parents have got to say about NoTube, and came to me with this miracle cure for Francesco that was, you know, just seemed a little far-fetched, a bit too good to be true. So I was naturally a cynic, and I said, you know, this is not necessarily the path for us. Let's not put all our eggs in one basket. Let's listen to this dietitian or this specialist more than these guys. And Emilia said, let's just book a call and find out if we did want to go from it, where we would go. Eva gave us a call, as Emilia says, and we spent about half an hour or 45 minutes on the phone to Eva. And by the time we came off that call, we were both sold, done. You know, this is just lots of things that Eva said completely resonated with Francesco's condition, the reflux, the severe reflux, the daily numerous vomiting, and the oral aversion. You know, Eva said, look, we are specialists in this, we've seen this before, you know, we know what the issues are, we know how to face them, we're specialists, and we're sort of quite adamant and quite sure that we can help Francesco, you know. And as I say, after that phone call, we both came off thinking, yeah, this is a no-brainer. Let's do it.
And do you then remember how the net coaching process started?
Yes, we had to immediately after the call, so the same day, Eva sent us a form to fill with all the information, the medical history of Francesco, you know, because clearly every child that every family that approaches you has a different issue. You know, the reason why the tube has been used is different for every child. So in our case was Francesco's skin condition. That was the reason, and you know, obviously you wanted to know all about his medical history in order to tell us if he could take part of the net coaching program or not. So we were, I think we were sending all the information that we could within a few days, you know, just gather all the information and send it to you, and we got an answer maybe the same day, the day after, I don't know, it was very, very quick. And they said, yes, he can do it. Mm-hmm. And from that moment, we opened the ticket with a NoTube, and we started straight away. You know, there was no hesitation, there was no waiting time, there was nothing. There was just, let's get started.
That sounds quite helpful. Do you remember any, like in the beginning, we always take about a week, I would say, to really understand his problem.
Yeah.
In contrast to a child which has a tube, each single child and each single family is completely different. And to understand why it hasn't happened before, we mostly take 3 or 4 days. And then the kind of contact starts, and we start suggesting the reduction. Do you remember any, like, what was easy for you in this first phase and what was difficult?
Okay. It was quite easy. I mean, it was quite easy because when we started with the program, the first, as you say, 2-3 days, it was all about, you know, question and answer, and all the questions were about Francesco, his personality, how I would describe Francesco, you know, so all these things that obviously define is Francesco, you know, him, not just a child with a problem, just him. And then, you know, obviously,
and I think we shared some videos. We could also see him.
Yes. You asked for videos to see, yes, which are to take, you know, of him playing, of him trying to drink, trying to eat. Obviously, he wasn't doing it, but we were obviously every day offering him food and everything. So we had to show what was the situation. I mean, how is Francesco, you know, how he's doing with everything, how he's dealing with life, you know. So I think you got really very, very good picture of him.
I think more so, sorry to interrupt, more so than anybody that we'd worked with any doctor or dietitian or specialist that we had worked with, NoTube were very, very considerate and thoughtful about Francesco as an individual, about understanding where Francesco is medically, where he is developmentally as an individual, and tailoring his program very specifically around him, his condition, all the complexities of his condition. And that was very reassuring, actually, as a parent, that somebody's actually listening to you, but not just listening, but interacting with you several times daily at first, actually. You know, very, very often when you speak to a doctor, when you speak to a dietitian or a specialist, you know, they tell you, okay, we're going to try this, go away and give it a go, and we'll call you in a week, or we'll see you here next month, or what have you. You know, with NoTube and the net coaching, it was, you know, hour by hour, sometimes via video, via the platform, the online platform.
I just want to answer a little question which just came in. And as far as I could read it, it asked about how his nutritional state was. And this is one of the very important early questions we ask. Francesco definitely for us was one of the 35% of children who was not thriving very well on tube feeds. He had enormous side effects with vomiting and reflux and pain and being nauseous, and his weight was on the utmost lowest percentile, even though they were pouring in as much as possible tube feeds. So this is the pattern, the growth pattern we get in the, it's not the majority, but at least 30% of all our medically fragile children arrive at NoTube with severe malnutrition, which Francesco didn't have, but he was on the very, very lowest percentile, which according to the severity of all the treatments he has was obviously the best he could have managed. But it's always different in the net coaching process, whether a child starts like puffy, and we would be even happy if a child would lose half a kilo or 1, or whether we have a child where we have to be very cautious and gentle about losing any weight at all, because the child has, for instance, a medical condition which can't really afford. And his very severe congenital skin disease was one of these situations where we knew from the beginning we must be very cautious, very gentle, and take it step by step. And then, as far as I remember, the whole corona burst in over us. I think
the drama.
Yeah, I think it happened in week 2 or 3 suddenly.
It happened quite soon, I guess. We were just in the middle of, doing the, the reductions. It was.
You told us about the stress, the corona stress, and then you had, I think, Adam and his daughter. Yes, Sophia and Adam were first ill, and then later on also Francesco was ill. So you did have a big lot of stress around you.
Yeah. I was the only one not having it, so the only one that had to look after the others.
Well, at least you weren't asymptomatic, but you probably did have it.
Yeah, I probably had it earlier on, but we don't know how. I wasn't tested. Yes, it was a very, very stressful time, as everybody can imagine. I had Sophia was all right, but Adam was in bed and he was not doing very well, with very strange symptoms. And then Francesco started, and I felt, what can I do now? I really felt lost, but I really had the support, your support, because nobody else, there's nobody that can give you support with COVID. There's not you can call a doctor and ask, what can I do? If you're not ill enough to be in the hospital, then you have to stay home and and
it was very trying and challenging times. I think that like in most countries, I presume the healthcare service here, the NHS here, sort of fell apart to a certain extent. You couldn't just phone your doctor. If you did phone your doctor and say, I've got these symptoms, they would say, just stay home, don't go out, don't speak to anyone, don't pick up the telephone, don't see, so we were really very isolated. I know the whole world was isolated to an extent, but we were isolated at home with COVID, and a very medically fragile baby, with all sorts of complexities around his disease. So yeah, very scary, very challenging times. But the only thing that didn't fall apart over that time was NoTube. They were there 24/7. Giving very definite advice with how to deal with Francesco over that time.
Yeah, not only that is to complicate the situation. When Adam fell ill, it was Easter. Easter, you would not even dream to call a doctor, but you were there 24 hour, any hour of the day, of the night, Sunday, Monday, whatever, always, so I felt so protected, you know. I felt, you know, I have a doctor there that I can ask. You gave me so many advices, you know, about how to feel in breathing, you know, if he's having difficulties, you know. I could not have any, you know,
I think for that
somehow I
time,
feel we
Margaret,
were lucky to have you,
yeah,
you know.
I think for that time, Margaret, you'd kind of become his GP, his paediatrician, his EB specialist, all wrapped up into one, and we definitely appreciated that
Yeah,
support at that time.
we have two little questions. One question was, did Francesco suffer from aspirations? And the answer is definitely no. He for sure did not have any kind of lung complications or swallow complications, but his underlying skin disease was of a severity taking a few hours a day of special skin care. So with all the eating problems he was having, he also additionally, you had to like really cream him and wash him and soothe him. The skin
wound care.
Yes, wound care over his whole body, and this was definitely also a big stress, whether he doesn't get an additional infection and whether we can keep the skin as stable as possible.
Yeah.
And the second question which just came in was the question about how much time it took, and I wasn't quite sure, but I think we started end of February. And
beginning of March, because he was 2 years old. Beginning of March.
And a month later, Francesco had the COVID positive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we were, from the learning to eat process, we were actually quite well already on the way. We had reduced the tube feeds, at least during the day, quite significantly. And he was happily showing pleasure with food. Is Francesco still sitting next to you?
No.
Okay.
No.
Sorry.
No, I have to go, but we will call him back, you know, later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit about the transition from not eating any food at all to becoming a happy and joyful eater?
Yeah.
This is about 2 months.
It didn't happen in a day, obviously. So it's been every day, you know, has been a challenge. But he started with he was feeling a little bit hungry, you know, something that he never felt before. You know, he was never give the opportunity to feel hungry, and he was more and more interested in food because we were following obviously all of, you know, the advice we were giving, and with your team, and we were putting food everywhere, you know, things that obviously he told us to do, and his interest was growing towards food. He was, you know, interested in food. What is food, you know? So he was playing with it, he was licking it, you know, he was doing all those things that, you know, he'd never done before. He never done before, you know. I think for him to actually put something in his mouth and chew and swallow, that took long time, you know. But his immediate interest with food, I mean, it was quite immediate, like, you know, he really wanted, he wanted to interact with the food. That's he was very excited to, you know, to have food around him. I mean, not that we didn't do it before, but we did do it in a different way, in a very stressful way, you know, in a very almost like, you know, artificial, and you know, like not controlled, but, you know, we were feeling the pressure of, you know, he needs to feed. So the tube fed was there all the time, but everybody will say, yeah, but you should wean him, you know. It's like, you know, you feel the pressure of what am I supposed to do now, you know. So
so
and
now it's now about 5 months after when the tube feeding stopped. What are his favorite foods right now? Can you describe?
Okay.
He's just had frittata for lunch, which is like an omelette. Frittata for lunch, cotoletta.
So it's a chicken breast with egg and bread crumble, which he loves. He likes pasta with tomato sauce.
Pizza.
He likes pizza.
He's an Italian.
Yeah.
Italian.
You know, he really likes food. He always asks me.
He likes chocolate.
Yeah.
He likes chocolate a lot. Ice creams.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
Yeah, he does not eat huge quantities. We're still working on, getting him to eat more, but the excitement is there, he likes the food.
Yeah.
Everything is there.
We have another little question about whether this process works for children who have a tracheostomy. That's a little hole with a little extra tube going into which he never had. And the answer is yes, it works, but we have to be sure that the swallow function is safe. This is one of the most important questions to be sure of before we can take a child as suitable. We need a safe swallow. And this is something which we can only rely on the knowledge and the examinations with other doctors have done. So children with a tracheostomy have, prior to starting the net coaching, have to have a swallow evaluation telling us it's safe. And the next question is when the G-tube was removed, which is definitely, I can also answer, the G-tube has not been removed because Francesco suffers from an underlying congenital skin disorder called Epidermolysis bullosa, which is a very unpredictable skin disorder. And the specialists taking care of that will probably, we don't know, advise to keep it in for quite a few more months or even longer.
Yeah.
The nutrients, yeah. The question now has come in about how we deal with the question of required nutrients, getting them in. And this is a very interesting question because the children having tubes come from a artificially perfect defined nutritional situation, which has been calculated by their body weight and age. So the nutritionist says a child of 9 kilo needs 1,000 calories and give them please like this, this, this. And in this nowadays, which wasn't like 40 years ago, we didn't have it yet, but the nutritions which are given by tube are so perfect, #perfect, that they should include all the vitamins and the zinc and the iron which children need. But when a child transfers to natural eating, things become much, much, much less perfect, but with the benefit of the child having, in nearly all cases, no more negative side effects. So the vomits stopped, the nausea stopped, the reflux stops, all these side effects which are unintended side effects of long-term tube feeding stop, and the nutrients get into the child like into any other child which never had a tube. Now, if you have a healthy child, or luckily in your case you had Sophia, so you had the experience that you exactly knew what a healthy child eats, and a healthy child doesn't eat every day, neither as a baby nor as a toddler nor later. A healthy child doesn't eat every day the same. We don't know whether it's 390 grams of carbs or 200 mils of this. We don't know exactly, as long as the child is thriving well. And this is the issue I'm talking now about, we call mental tube dependence. And this is an issue for the parents. It's not the child's problem, because a child at age 2 will happily dive into the world of food if it hasn't been terribly traumatized before with force feeding and such things, which luckily wasn't the case. But the children drop their aversion within days. This is very amazing, because we're always told oral aversion and the long history of it. And within 48 hours, the child has has just forgotten it or left it, and that's over. But in the minds of the parents, we have 5 times 200, 6 times 180, whatever. We have all these it must be so much. And they also go through experience that doctors are hardly interested in anything else than the weight curve. So the parents get this kind of artificial responsibility of needing to prove that their child is getting so many grams of protein, so many grams of fat every single day, which is the case as long as a child is fully on tube feeds. And when a child is naturally fed, and we do this, we still force our parents to report the weight in the first month every day. The weight analysis, or let's say the tube reduction, is adjusted to the weight course. And if a child starts very thin, we will not let it lose too much, not even maybe 5% less, and then it'll take a little longer. And if a child is a little even overweight, we don't have to worry about that. But the time till it takes till a child is able to sustain its own nutritional requirements after the tube feeds have been stopped is about between a week and a month at most. This is the time one has to kind of help the parents tolerate this uncertainty of imperfection, which I always then try and help them by saying, well, you know, if your child had a kidney problem, we would be counting mils of urine, and thank goodness you haven't gone on that trip. But leaving the control is a very, very important issue. Letting go of needing to know how many grams this was, and helping the parents to trust their child and to become confident that as long as the child is happy and well and eating and drinking and sleeping and moving and slowly, gradually starting to gain weight, it probably things are going good. And this is really hard because some parents have been, since the birth of their child, like in constant medical alarm emergency situation. They're fully traumatized, and they can't just say, oh yes, I see he's doing well, let's forget about all our worries. So the psychological and psychotherapeutic support of the parents is, I think, crucial. Without that, we can't wean children.
We'll echo that, Margaret. The NoTube is as much of a coaching course for parents and managing parents' expectations of what their child should or shouldn't be eating than it is a weaning program for the children. In fact, more so. It's yeah, absolutely wouldn't disagree with anything.
It's so interesting. After having worked, I worked all my life in a big university hospital, and I noticed that in neonatology, the concept of aftercare or rehabilitation, and especially in child oncology, they realize, the doctors who are in the acute phase realize that the families need support to get back to normal life. But with food, it's just like only the tube, and nobody really is responsible structurally. The gastroenterologist says, well, it's not really my thing because I put the tube in and I've done my work. And the other doctors say, well, as
dietitians obsessed with calories.
Exactly. And all the other specialists say, well, the mothers will manage, you know, they're also nervous, and then they put even more pressure. So this, what we call now oral rehabilitation, is a field of medicine which neither in early childhood nor in old age, where people have strokes and get tubes for strokes, of which some of them recover so much that they could get off the tube again. If you at 75 have a stroke and you're lucky, after a few weeks you will be able, the neurology recovers and you will be able to swallow again. But people are somehow not interested because the tube is doing the work, and the tube gives us full control, and then we know how much is in the child. And this control, the medical system seems sometimes a bit reluctant to let the control go. and to
Yeah.
trust these kids.
Yeah.
To
But
become
Margaret, in Francesco's case, for example, the tube wasn't doing the work. You know, the tube was
Not
more of a
efficient.
hindrance than it was a help. My
Yeah.
son was vomiting every day, almost the entirety of his meal, several times a day. He was in a failure to thrive situation on the lowest possible centile. He lacked any energy. He was behind mentally. He was behind vocally. He was behind on his gross motor. You know, all of those things changed once we began the weaning program with NoTube. You know, you talk about side effects, the vomiting as a side effect of the tube, you know, and the oral aversions are side effects, but there are other side effects. You know, our son is much more energetic now than he ever has been. He's much more verbal and vocal, confident and charismatic than he ever has been. And that's changed in such a short time period, you know, due to the help of NoTube.
Yeah, he's catching up with a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's I find it culturally very interesting because if you look at adolescents refusing to eat, which we call anorexia, they don't even call that an eating disorder. They call it a mental disorder, and nobody cares about the direct effects of starvation. And in children who have been tube fed all their life, the physiology of digesting food is completely different, because the food falls every few hours like an avalanche into the stomach. And some children have a different anatomy, but oral feeding starts in your mind. It starts when you smell mommy cooking and you see mommy or daddy making pasta. Yeah. And then you have hormonal and enzymatic regulations start, which prepare the stomach to deal with the food on a level of good resorption. And that's why, and people don't seem to understand that, most of what we feed the child by tube is not resorbed. It's either vomited or it's resorbed only a part of it, because the stomach is not ready to take it, because the food comes at 11 o'clock, because that's what they said. And the whole physiology, which we usually have when we are naturally eating, doesn't happen. And this whole business in literature has up to now found very, very little attention. There's very little scientific evidence of people feeling interested in why on earth are children thriving better after the tube is out, or the tube feeds are not given anymore, even though they are getting definitely less calories. And we would call that a lack of tube management knowledge. The whole concept of managing the tube-fed child, even before weaning, is in Austria very developed, because we've been taking care of this for the last 30 years. And I would nearly say that there's no Austrian child which could be older than 12 months left on a tube without being sent to us. Because all the pediatricians, we are a small country, and all the pediatricians know each other, and they just know that if a child isn't off the tube latest by 12 months, we like to get them after 6 months, and then things are so much easier. So this whole idea of just wait till the miracle happens is nonsense. It's really harmful nonsense, because we are missing the very, very important developmental windows. If you wean a child at 8 months, it nearly happens, you know, nearly. You have to take care of a few things, and you have to monitor carefully, but developmentally, the child is ready to do it. But if you wait till a child is 4.5, it's become the tube has become part of its identity, and it's absolutely frightened at the idea of taking out that tube, because it'll take out a part of me. And the luck with Francesco was that it was early enough that mentally he has become, also due to his sister and you, a normally eating child. Even before he was eating fully normally, he felt like a child of course I can do that. And that's the big luck you have when a child has an older sibling.
Yeah.
Because it's an intermediate family therapist between the parents who are trying too hard, look how it goes, and all these things, too much effort is done, and the siblings just say, have the cookie, and just kind of try things. And that was a very beneficial factor in your family, that he had Sophia.
Yeah, and I remember I was advised to have Sophia in the table with him and to help, and she's been incredible.
Yeah. Now, wait a minute. I'm just seeing.
We
Yes.
have questions. So there was one about beyond the support of NoTube team, how did you as parents felt during the process at the beginning?
Can you repeat that so we can hear again? Sorry.
Yes, sure. So beyond the support of NoTube teams, how did you as parents felt during the process and at the beginning?
Yeah, beyond this again.
I always wanted to win Francesco. I always want him to be able to eat, I always want him to be able to drink, to be normal, I always know he's normal child, he's intelligent, everything. So for me at the beginning, I was obviously really, for me it was like, finally I'm doing what I always wanted to do, I'm doing naturally, I'm doing, I have the support of medicals, that, psychotherapists, even physiotherapists, I have all the support that I need to do this,
Via NoTube.
NoTube, it was NoTube, obviously. So at the beginning, I felt really this is what I wanted to do for a long time. So I felt really good about it, really good about. And then during the program, I don't know, it's been a joy, honestly. I mean, yeah, you're worried about things because as a mom, you're always worried about things. I was worried for Sophia as well. We were in lockdown. It was, stressful somehow, for being in lockdown. So it was a very difficult situation. And then the COVID, drama and everything. So, and then there's up and downs there as well, because you can't go on, as you would like to do with a program when your child falls ill. So, during the program, up and down, but
we had to interrupt.
Yeah.
We have a question. We interrupted, of course, the weaning during his COVID 2 weeks, I think I remember. And I think we even increased his tube feeds a tiny bit again to not risk him losing too much weight. But one question came in now, Emilia, were you working or did you ask for holiday? I think since the birth of Francesco, you've been at home in any case.
Okay. The situation is that I work from home, so I was working from home. But Adam, since Francesco was born, has been at home basically. So
I had a career, but when Francesco was born, it was very apparent that I would need to be at home, and so I'm essentially Francesco's carer. So he has us to the most part at home every day with him. So that wasn't really an issue around home.
Yeah. I did the work. I did have to work. Yeah.
I just want to answer to the parents. They don't have to take off holiday. We work in the net coaching with whoever is living with the child.
Yeah.
So this can be the grandmother, the nanny,
the
father, the uncle, the daycare. It is not necessary to take holiday because we are weaning the child in the world it lives in.
Yeah.
And however complex this world might be, we will adapt to that. And if a
Yeah.
child needs 3 times a week to go to hospital for lab controls, then we will have to adapt to that. And if a child has special therapies which would interrupt, I don't know, needs a dialysis or something,
Yeah.
the Netcoaching program, as Adam said before, is tailored individually for every single child in the details. So
Yeah.
on a day-to-day level, we can't say this child will take 3 weeks and this child will take 3 months. We first have to get to know the situation better.
Yeah. Yeah, so as you said, you know, for me it was possible to carry on working. Even if I work from home, I was doing exactly the same life, you know, before. Clearly with the lockdown, things that were different, you know, obviously, you know, but they would have been exactly the same without NoTube. So NoTube did not change anything in our life,
No, it's not
daily life, yeah.
Wonderful. Do we have another question, Rose?
Yes. So Christina is asking, Francesco sounds exactly like my daughter. May I ask if he lost weight as they weaned him off, and how many tube feeds a day, and what was the volume that they started at? How quickly did they wean the feeds down?
Okay.
Yeah, so-
Francesco's weight at the beginning was not around 10 kilos. And in his case, the 10 kilos for his age were on the low side, as Adam said. He was getting full feeds at the beginning, which was around 1,000 mils. And we very quickly went down to about 500-600 mils to stop the vomits and to give him a nutritional support, but also to gain some time for his oral skills to catch up. And I think this is something which really is based on a lot of what we would call medical experience. Some children will jump from 0 by mouth to eating quite nice portions within a week, and some children will just need 2 months. It depends very, very much on their sensory pattern, on their pre-existing oral skills, because some children, for instance, are fully tube fed but can drink water easily, and then it's much, much, much easier. I know then the swallowing is safe, and I know hydration will be safe, so we can much faster take the tube feeds down. But here on the webinar, we don't really want to give any detailed advice on he was getting 6 times 180 and then we changed to 5 times 150, because this recipe would be different for every single child.
So we have another question. What happens if the child loses too much weight? Do you go back to the tube, or there is another method?
No. You can see in the first weeks of reduction, in the first days, how the catch up and how the compensation happens with each child. So as I said, if a child more or less starts drinking 100 mils of water, 50 mils of milk, 50 mils of pudding, then I can very, very quickly take the tube feeds down, and we usually try to not exceed 5% weight loss. But also this is very much depending on the weight at onset and on the medical condition. If I have a child which is neurologically impaired, or a child which is maybe still getting severe medication for another condition, then I will be much more cautious and not risk. Some children even lose 10%, and it's only beneficial because they were overfed before. So the question of weight loss on a scientific level, if I look at hundreds of children, our average is between 5 and 10%, but the average doesn't give much information on how it will happen for your child. And all I can say is this issue is very crucial, and it has to be monitored individually. There's no recipe to say we just take all some programs in the world called more the starvation methods, just take off all the tube feeds, and in some cases the child jumps and will start eating and drinking, and in many cases one just has to then interrupt the program, and we try and avoid that. So our usual time frame is to get the child to maybe first step would be something like 40% of its original tube feeds, and see whether the oral compensation is catching up. And then we would only go down to 0 if the weight curve is stable enough that it's responsible to do that. And in the case when you have a child on a peg, one has the possibility to keep the child longer with, if you need it and if you want it, on a night supplement, than if a child has a nasogastric tube. Because children on a nasogastric tube, it's a decision, we're going to do it or not. And if we decide with the parents to do it, to pull the tube out, then we have a trial, mostly weekend, and in maybe 10%, the tube has to be put back because the child maybe in the week after falls ill or just can't manage, because we overestimated the oral capacity, but it's very rare. Mostly the tube only has to be given back because the child has a severe medical complication which needs to be dealt with, and it's not able to invest its energy into the eating. For instance, having a very high fever and needing to go back to hospital. But all in all, one must be very careful that this word success rate, which means children are off their tube feeds completely, this is something one must not be in a hurry to reach. I think that's very dangerous, because as in Francesco's case, the main first step was to get him off all his side effects and get him to become a food enjoying child. Yeah. And the question in his case, whether the peg will be taken out in a few weeks or maybe only next year, we can't answer this yet. And if, God behold, which we don't hope, he would become so sick that he couldn't drink and eat anymore, then of course one could use the tube again because it's still here. So in children with an underlying medical condition, we are generous in leaving the tube unused for longer time, because it's a quite different situation than having something stuck into your face unnecessarily for more than necessary. Sorry, that was a bit long.
Yes, so we have 10 questions from the audience. So we will start to, or we will try to be a little bit quicker this time. Were any doctors apart from NoTube were involved?
We had let our general paediatrician know that we were thinking about engaging NoTube into Francesco's care, but that was about it really, if we're honest with you, just because the advice that we had gotten before then was so based around flooding Francesco with calories and pumping him full of all this milk, and we'd seen so many negative side effects, and every conversation we had been around oh, well, you know, in the future, and calories.
Yeah, we haven't been encouraged to do it.
Not encouraged at all. And actually, we almost felt a bit like, you know, we needed to keep it a secret and keep it from people, because we didn't know what their reaction would be, as ridiculous as that sounds.
We didn't want any pressure, you know. I know that in the moment, because I tried to say that before, you know, I tried to say, you know, to doctors, you know, I want to do this, I want to go with this clinic in Austria, I want to try, you know, this way, I want to wean him. And all the doctors were like reluctant to say, it's more important that he gets off reflux. It's more important that he gains weight. Weaning him is not that important. It's not that important. He can live with his formula for all his life. This was more or less, what we've been told. And under that kind of pressure, as a mother, as a father, we can't really risk our child, life by doing that. So, but at the same time, we know that that was not true, because many times doctors, they really care about what is happening now. They don't see the long terms. They don't deal with that. Families has to deal with that, has to deal with the long term of a child that is tube fed. They have to just help in that moment. So for us, it's been, let's do it. And we do it. But our pediatrician, Francesco pediatrician, was happy to do it.
And I must say, this also depends very much on the underlying diagnosis, because if necessary, of course, the pediatricians of NoTube, we are 3 pediatricians, will contact before, during, or after any doctor who we feel we need to talk to, or who feels he would like to talk. This is something which I invest a lot of time and passion to, because it also helps our reputation that this is not crazy work, but that we're responsible pediatricians in a small niche of the field. When a child is taken, for instance, oncological medication, we always talk before with the doctors, and we make sure whether the timing of the wean suits the therapy plan, or the children with heart surgeries. So many children have quite a series of heart surgeries, and we would never start a wean 2 months before a big heart surgery.
Margaret, sorry to interrupt. What's really interesting about Francesco's case specifically is Francesco, from the time he was just a couple of weeks old, suffered from terrible reflux. He was on a cocktail of medications to be able to relieve the reflux, which we were told he had problems with. He had impedance study, pH study, contrast study, and gastric emptying studies, all based around trying to understand why his reflux was so severe. He had the gastrostomy as a result of his reflux and the vomiting and the eating problem, and also was actually due to have a procedure called a Nissan's fundoplication to be able to alleviate the reflux. NoTube were very adamant and forward in saying that Francesco doesn't necessarily have a reflux problem. Francesco has a tube problem, and very quickly we saw through the net-coaching program, reducing his feed, a massive reduction in his vomiting, and all these different side effects. And we knew all of these doctors, all of these surgeons, all of these people that told us Francesco, needs these surgeries and needs these medications, and had put us off, had been resistant in us talking to NoTube. But we're all wrong.
I'm not saying they were not trying to help, absolutely. But I mean, I asked in more than an occasion, is it because he's tube fed? Is it the tube that is making him vomit? Can it be like, and all of them, they said no. And that is the problem. I mean, how can you not take that into consideration? I would say to all the families that are listening now and that have similar problems, with the tube feeds, just get a conversation with NoTube. Just hear another voice, because maybe you've never been told so far, like we did. We never been told about that, even if I was thinking maybe it is, and I was asking that question, doctor will say, no, it's not that for sure, so clearly, their interest is on another side. They don't want you to get rid of the tube. They want the control on the tube.
Let's try and still let Rose ask the 9
the other 9 questions. Quick fire, multiple choice.
We'll be quick.
Yes, first of all, I just want to say that one of our audience, Mirit, she's writing, Emilia and Adam, you are so brave and and an inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. It helps a lot. No feeling, no feeling so lonely is in the process. No one can understand what you have gone through it. So
Thank
that's
you.
if I wanted you to hear that.
Thank you.
A question. Do you, NoTube, have to communicate with Francesco's doctor to proceed with the program?
We ask all parents to inform their medical team that they are intending to do a wean. We don't like to work secretly, and we for sure don't want to work behind the back, and we will not wean a child if there is an explicit no-go for weaning. And this is especially in the children with swallow problems. This point has to be addressed very specifically and individually, because if there's any therapist or doctor saying, please do not oral feed, then we will for sure respect this and try to understand which examinations possibly could still help in finding out whether the situation maybe has changed in the last month or not. But
Francesco was able to swallow, when we start the program. I can confirm that. Yeah.
Next question.
Okay. Virginia also says here, thanks for the parents, emphasize a lot. She says hello. And for the next question, could you please tell me a bit more about starting a program for the kids with no oral skill? What kind of food do you start off specifically for kids refusing spoon feed? And what is the process of the program lead the kid to take food? Thank you.
Okay, that will very much depend on how old the child is and what the developmental state is of a child. If a child is able to sit stably, that means straight, and use its hands, the first step will be to try and get the hands into the food. And this process has to happen before the food comes to the lips. The hands have to, like in small babies, they have to want to hold the bottle, and this helps very much to also coordinate the oral skills and the swallowing coordination, which needs to be done. So the first foods or the topic we discuss with the parents is, does your child can your child smear the pudding, or will it lick the pudding off its finger, or will it hold a cookie? Is your child able to have even food on its lips, or will it start gagging? And we first have to find out where the child is developmentally, but also sensory and mentally. Because as long as a child, and many children with a PEG are frightened of food. You put food in front of them and they back off like this. They go, oh my God. As long as we have this, we can't start even thinking of feeding. The first thing to overcome is the psychological and the sensory inhibition and avoidance behavior, and get the hands and the mind into wanting to go to the food. And once this happens, and when we organize nice picnics with the whole family, and maybe even invite other children, then this process of actually getting it from the hand into the mouth mostly goes very quickly.
Great. So for the next question, my daughter is 6 months of corrected age. She eats a lot of puree. And has an NG tube, but she doesn't take her liquid intake. How can you help with that?
We will wean her off the tube, and if she can live on puree food by tube, she can also live on puree food by mouth. We don't need additional water drinking, because if she manages now, then we will manage afterwards naturally.
Okay, so for the next one. Our son originally had an unswathed solo silent aspiration. Recently, he has had a VF which shows safe swallow on thickened liquids, but they couldn't test on food. Is that enough to proceed with no tube or additional tests required? He
No.
eats fruit, melty snacks, and so far no chest infections.
That's enough for us. If he's safe on caloric fluids, thickened fluids, that's absolutely sufficient, and we can go ahead. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, so the next question. I'm sorry, I know it was started at the start, but was Francesco weaned at 18 months?
Francesco now is 31 months, and the wean started when he was 2 years old.
Yeah, 2 years old, yeah.
In,
So 24 months.
Yes, 2 years old this spring, late spring.
Yeah.
And now we are 7 months after. And this is, if we had been able to meet Adam and Emilia 6 months or even 12 months earlier, then a lot of pain and trouble would have been saved on their side and on Francesco's side. So the ideal age to do a wean, when it's clear that there's no medical need to keep the tube anymore, is between 6 and 12 months. That's the ideal age.
So we have another question related to that. Michael asks, when would you say, is it too late to wean off a child? My son is already 8.
No, it's not too late. You can even be 15 years old, but we will have to find out. The mindset is a much more important point, and the question will be whether the child himself would like to eat like all the other children, and whether there's no medical reason to prevent it.
Great. So for the next one, Cindy is asking, the parents, I guess, if you could have gone to Austria, would you have preferred it than the net coaching?
No, let me answer, because at the beginning, when I heard about NoTube, I didn't know about the online, the net coaching program. So I only know that you have to go there basically to do this eating school, you know, in order to wean, which I really wanted to do. But I waited so long because Francesco was not fit for traveling, you know, he was not very well with vomiting and things like that. So to be honest, if I knew that net coaching was available, I would have done that long time before. So yes, initially we wanted to go there, and we waited long time to do it. But then when I heard of net coaching program, I thought, maybe this is the solution. Maybe my child cannot go there. Maybe they can come here in a way through internet, obviously. So between the two, we chosen the online. Yeah.
Can I just say, I'm so glad that we didn't have to leave our home. To have Francesco as a very fragile child because of his condition in his home environment where he feels safe, surrounded with his parents and his sister in a very normal environment, I feel really aided in the wean, in everything that NoTube did. And make no mistake about it, NoTube, they were in Vienna, but they were here with us, you know, on the other end of the web platform, several times daily. You know, we were constantly in conversation with them for a number of weeks and months. So it really did feel like they were here for us in our home environment. And I feel that it was massively beneficial to be able to have done it in the home environment. We didn't need to go to Vienna.
When you do the program, every day you can write any question you have. You know, you always get an answer in the day, you know, I mean, the same day, you know, as many questions as you want, as many doubts, as many advice you need. At the same time, every day you have to fill in like a protocol where you have to put the weight. You have to weigh your child every day. The height, obviously, don't measure every day, but they want to know, you know, every day, because if it takes 6 months, they want to know if in 6 months' time, you know, your child has been growing in height. and you have to put, you know, whatever you give him orally or via tube. Obviously, via tube is what they tell you to do. Oral is what you is what your child can eat, you know, can manage. At the beginning, might be just one sip of water, you know. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be like, you know, oh, I have to put, you know, he has to eat so much, you know, at the beginning, you know. But you will see after a few months, then you're going to put more and more food there that you think, you know, okay, 3 bites of this, 2 bites of the other thing, and also the fluid intake orally. So every day you have to do that. Plus every day you can talk to them about everything you want, you know, even if, as I've done many times, you know, if you feel down for anything, you know, they're there to help you with anything, honestly.
The intensity of filling out these intake protocols decreases when the child is increasing orally.
Yeah.
And at the end, when the tube is on 0, we mostly only need 1 or at most 2 protocols per week. So that's also a process of learning to count less, to being able to trust more and to count less, and to just use the weight twice a week as a good orientation.
Yeah.
What is the next question, Rose?
So there is a question here. Would it be possible if a kid weaned the tube successfully first and after a while stop the oral eating again? Is that possible?
You mean, can that happen?
Yes.
Yes, of course. There could be a new reason. A child can have had a tube for neonatal reasons after birth, and then 2 years after eating completely normal, it might have, for instance, a choking experience, and a choking experience based on a kind of traumatized history with all the learning to eat can lead to a kind of acute strike in eating, and can be so frightening for a child that they might stop to eat. You call that post-medical episode disorder, feeding disorder, and the local doctors will then be asked whether the child needs a drip or whether the child needs a tube. So weaning a child for the second time from a second tube is sometimes, it's very rare, but it happens.
Mm-hmm. So another question is, how can we manage serious defensive children?
Could you say that again?
Yeah. How can we manage serious defensive children?
What is a serious defensive child?
I guess we would need to wait for the
maybe they're meaning a food aversive child. So if we have a child, I talked about that before, which is frightened of food and really hates food and has gotten so used to the tube, this is mostly after the age of 3 or 4, that it really, it kind of is frightened for food. We have to first work a lot with play and psychology and doll playing with food and symbolic, getting the child prepared to want to become an oral eating child. And that's quite a process. We call that play psychotherapy. And it works and it's fun. And eventually the children give us the information when they are ready to let the tube go. And one is not allowed to pressurize them. Even if the tube is not used anymore, some children cannot imagine taking it out of their body. And we always advise the parents to wait till the child comes up and says, I'm ready now.
Good. So we have 2 more questions, and I think afterwards we will be done. So first question is, how can a parent pay for this program? Okay, so my grandchild is in the US and I doubt insurance will cover, so maybe a little bit talking about insurances if possible. Yeah, just.
Well, the pay question is that we are a firm of 20 members, team members, and to be able to keep a service at this intensity of really 365 days a year, of course, we cannot work for nothing and we have to pay salaries. And the treatment of the net coaching costs around $5,000. And telemedicine since COVID has become very, very like fashionable. And there's been an enormous rise in the preparedness of insurances, medical healthcare, to cover even the whole thing. In Austria, we mostly have to talk with each insurance of each child because there are very many different ones. And some will pay for the whole thing, some will pay for a percentage, and some will say we need an additional medical recommendation. And it's a question of being patient enough and really investing creativity. Eva, there's a lot of support and help, and our other team members in trying to understand why they're saying no and trying to convince them. Some say this is not scientific, and then we send 10 papers. Some say we first need other results, then we do this. And so some test us till they have enough information that they feel they can cover it. And in many, many cases, they just say no the first time. And if you then give a good list of reasons why it would be possible and a good idea, then most of them say yes in the second trial. So one's not allowed to become discouraged if the first answer is no. And otherwise, we have other things like crowdfunding, community support, doing an article in a paper and asking all your friends to give €50 or $50. And if parents really, really need financial support and they have a little time for it, we've made the experience that they really manage to get it. And it also depends how much this is from in which country you live.
I'm back. I'm back.
Ah, hello.
He's mixing up English and Italian. He says that he's been in Sophia's bedroom, so now it's
You've
like
been busy.
So it's around, the net coaching is around $5,000 and it's not $30,000. That's rubbish. That's wrong.
Yes. Can you read a little bit?
There's a short message at 4:18 about the JPEG, and I would have to look at it, but if the JPEG is not managing to rise the weight effectively, then mostly weaning is a better idea than continuing not successful and not effective. Okay.
Sorry. Sophia.
Okay.
Okay. Do we still have a question, Rose?
Yeah, we have two more. Yeah, two more, but it's increasing, so we would need to stop in any case, like soon. But let's try another one before. Hi, my son is nearly 10 years old. He's tube feed and multiple surgeries, but the doctor says he already is ready to eat. We just eat yogurt and drinks, but he doesn't want to try anything else. How can we introduce him to more food if he says no?
Okay, this is a very complex question, and this is not, as far as I understand, a tube-fed child, but a highly selective eater at 10 years. This can have sensory reasons, emotional reasons, a whole lot of different kinds of reasons. And usually we would advise a child like that to start with occupational therapy and to try and get the funding to come to one of our eating schools, because at this age, to help a highly selective picky eater by the internet is quite challenging. And we would recommend, if possible, to come here and to visit one of our eating schools as commencements.
Great. So I think we are done with the questions. We have another note from Sarah. Thank you, NoTube, for changing the life of our super nephew. He loved having our recent picnic, seeing Francesco tucked into sushi and strawberries. Well done, Adam and Emilia. You're an inspiration.
Very nice.
Yeah. And yeah, so we have some kind of supporting messages as well. And thank you, everyone, for being so supportive and amazing.
Thank you very much, Adam, Emilia, Sophia, and
Very welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Margaret.
the hero, Francesco. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao. Bye.